Welcome to Mokena's Front Porch, a Mokena history podcast with Matt Galick and me, Israel Smith.
Maddie was always we always said she had a servant's heart. She was the type of kid that she just, if anybody needed help, she went to help. Whether she knew what she was doing or not, she'd still try to help. I got to talk to you. Okay, well, what? She goes, you know, that car accident made me think that if something like that were to ever happen again and things didn't work out as well, I want something good to come from something bad. So I want to be an organ donor. And I was like, no, we are not having this conversation. Well, it all started really because I wanted to be able to just talk about Maddie again, you know, that she was gone. And I wanted as many opportunities as I could to talk about Maddie. Any day I get to talk about Maddie's a good day. And so that was always that's how the whole thing got started. But we also found the hope that donation gives you. And
I got to meet Frank and Cyndi Grobmeier last year sometime when they came and spoke to the Mokena Lions Club and shared the story, some of the story that you're going to hear in this episode. They are a great couple. They turned a tragedy into something amazing that they're doing for the community and for really, goes well beyond that now with some of the things that they're working on that you'll hear them talk about. But I got to meet them at the Mokena Lions Club meeting. As I said, they kind of shared a little bit of their story, and it was just a really touching and compelling story. And I'm sure a lot of us know somebody that's been touched by organ donation in one way or another. So I don't want to get too much into it or share too much. This is a long episode. They had a lot to say, and I'm glad we were able to share it here. But please enjoy this episode. This is November. Thanksgiving is coming up here in a couple days, and we have a lot to be thankful for. We just passed Veterans Day, so we're thankful for all our veterans. We're thankful for Thanksgiving, that we're able to come up and celebrate together, and I'm thankful for groups like this that are doing great work in our community. So enjoy their story, and we have some information at the end for you if you want to contact them or volunteer or make a donation. So we'll share that at the end. So enjoy this episode of Mokena's Front Porch. Just tell me a little about, where'd you guys grow up? Where were you born?
So I grew up out here. I grew up in Green Garden, went to Piatone High School, spent my whole life out here until I graduated and decided to go to St. Xavier University up on the south side of Chicago. And that was sort of my first foray into the city. And I was majoring in communication there, which is how I met Frank.
Oh, okay.
And it's the Green Acres story, I guess. I was the city boy. I grew up in Chicago on the southwest side, around 83rd and Pulaski. And,
oh, really? My wife grew up at 79th and Pulaski.
Oh, yeah.
Went to
right
Bogan.
Bogan there. Yeah, I went to Brother Rice.
Okay.
And then ended up going to St. Xavier. And that's where, like Cyndi said, that's where we met. And then when we got married and were looking to buy our first house, she suggested we move out here, and I went, wait, south of I-80? Isn't that like where the earth just drops off? We can't go out there. And it's the best move we ever made.
You know, it's funny because my wife has a very similar story. Lived in the city her whole life until she married me, and I brought her out here, and we've been in the suburbs ever since. So, where did you first live in this area?
Actually, when we first got married, we moved to Worth, to an apartment in Worth. And then we decided that, she had to ease me into moving out here. So she's like, well, you're familiar with Harlem Avenue. Why don't we just go further south on Harlem until we hit Sod Farms, and then that's where we're going to stake our claim. So we actually moved into our first house, and it's still the house we live in today.
Oh, wow.
Right in Frankfurt Square, right off of Harlem.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. And so professionally, you said you studied marketing, and so is that what you all end up doing after college?
So I started in the communication major thinking that I was going to get into broadcast news or something, I think like everybody back then, and ended up having an opportunity to help one of my faculty members teach and fell in love with it. So I eventually, when we graduated, I went and got my master's degree from Governor State. Actually, we both did, and ended up teaching part-time for years, and I've been full-time teaching communication at St. Xavier University, our alma mater,
Oh, wow.
for the past 6 years.
Oh, that's great. Wow. Okay.
And I had out of college, I went to work in the news field. I was a reporter for several publications. Ultimately, ended up at the Chicago Tribune, covering the southwest suburbs, Hickory Hills area, Palos Hills area.
What kind of stuff would you cover for them?
A lot of boring stuff, a lot of board meetings and school board meetings and village board meetings. And, whenever
Sure.
then a big story broke, then they'd say, okay, you get out of the way and we're bringing in our heavy crew. And I didn't want to earn my bones. I wanted them given to me. So I was like, all right, well, maybe this isn't for me. And then we decided we were going to get married and start a family. And so I guess I said, that's no life for a family guy. So I proudly call myself a recovering journalist. And so I got out of the news business and went back for actually my master's at Governor's, because I don't have an original thought. I have to follow everything Cyndi does. So she goes to Governor's. I'm like, hey, that's a good idea. I'll go to Governor's. So,
Hey, nothing wrong with following a good thought, right?
That's right. So that's where I went as well. And then I went into the lucrative world of the lighting industry. And I worked for a light bulb manufacturer in Alsip. And when I started there, they told me, you get into this industry, you're never getting out. And I said, it sounds like it's a life sentence. And they said, it is a life sentence. So, yeah, I spent 30 years working in marketing for different lighting manufacturers and learned a lot and had a lot of fun. And
yeah. So how about, do you all still have family, parents, siblings, or anything in the area?
So I'm an only child.
Okay.
But my mom lives in Chicago Heights.
Okay.
My dad passed away when I was 14. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And how about you, Frank?
Most of the rest of my family is either in Ireland or on the East Coast.
Ireland, wow.
Yeah.
Like because your family came here in the
Yes,
recent
my grandparents
past?
immigrated here. I'm second generation.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay. So have you been back?
Yes,
you go?
did go back once, and I want to go back again.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Okay. And Frank, do you have family?
my mom lives in Beverly. And my two sisters and their husbands one lives in Evergreen Park and one lives in Mount Greenwood. So they couldn't leave the south side like I did. But
all their
That's
kids did. All of our kids did.
Come to think of it, I've got nieces and nephew. And
We've got a niece in Washington State, a nephew in St. Louis, a niece who's back here in Chicago, and then our daughter lives in New York City.
Oh, wow.
So they all went, phew.
Yeah. It's either like one or the other, right?
Right.
Either stay super tight or spread your wings.
yeah.
Interesting. So what year was it then that you guys moved to Frankfurt Square? Any idea?
98.
98. Okay.
That would have been the answer I gave too. So got it right.
So tell me about that. Tell me about your family and as you two came together and settled here in the south suburbs.
So we moved into Frankfurt Square in 98, and we had Sam, our oldest daughter, in 2000. She was born in February of 2000. And then a short 16 and a half months later, we had Maddie join the family.
And true Irish.
Truly
fashion.
Irish, yeah.
And you could not meet two more opposite children than Sam and Maddie.
How so? How's that?
Everything. Sam was tall, and Sam was musical, and just everything came naturally to her in school, and very into the arts. And Maddie, from the age of walking, couldn't sit still. So we enrolled her in a little Mommy and Me program in gymnastics. And by the age of 3, they were telling us that, we're looking at her for team. And I went, what?
By 3.
By 3 years old, they were looking
Wow.
at her to possibly develop her to do competitive gymnastics, and she was just super athletic and short and dark haired and dark eyed, and Sam was tall and blonde hair and blue eyed. Go
So
figure.
that's 3 years old. Now I know you end up at Gym Kinetics. Is that at that time? Is that come later, or how do you
Nope,
end up there?
she was at Gym Kinetics her entire
Wow.
her entire life, her entire gymnastics career, which is super unusual in the gymnastics world. There's very few gymnasts that stay at the same gym their whole life.
So what was it that brought? Did you just happen to come upon Gym Kinetics,
Mm-hmm.
or?
It was just, they had a mommy and me class,
Yeah.
and so we decided that was a good place to go, and that was how we ended up there, and thank goodness we did.
But we instantly knew that there was something special there. Not Maddie, of course, but there was something special about that place. I don't know why. It felt like home.
We clicked with the coaches.
Clicked with the coaches. Everybody seemed to get along. There wasn't a competitive thing amongst the parents, and it just, I don't know why, it just had that thing that just made it click. It just felt like home, and we obviously we enjoyed it and Maddie enjoyed it because she stayed there the whole time.
Yeah.
Graduated from there.
So how does that work? Not being really familiar with youth gymnastics, let alone you're doing competitions. Is it a year-round thing she's doing, or seasonal?
They started looking at her at 3. She actually started on the developmental team right before she turned 6. And then, at that point, when she was 6, it was 2 to 3 nights a week, 3 hours a night.
Wow.
And then as she got older, it was 5 nights a week plus a day on the weekends.
Wow.
So Frank used to say she probably spent more time in the gym than she really spent at home awake with us a lot of times.
And then your daughter, Sam, did she have like kind of a counterpart to that? Was she in this something?
She did. She was in music and theater. And so she did band and choir, singing, vocal was her thing. And ultimately, she did a lot of local theater companies, but ultimately, she was the lead for Hunchback of Notre Dame. She was Esmeralda her senior
Through
year
the high
at Lincoln
school?
Way East.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But
it was funny because Maddie, we talk about gymnastics a lot with Maddie, but Maddie she was an athlete, just pure and simple. I mean, that side came natural to her. I just remember a funny story where we were trying to get Sam into athletics, and so we were like, hey, why don't we try t-ball? And so we took her to t-ball, and she was not good. and
She's not having it.
So we're like, I'm going to practice with you. And we're out in the front yard, and we're throwing the ball back and forth, and she just could not throw the ball, and it would trickle down, and then Maddie would run over, and she'd pick it up, and she'd just pop right into my mitt. And I was like, do that again. And then she'd be like, pop. And I'm like, do it again. And Sam's like, I thought we were practicing. Be quiet. Let your sister play ball.
Did she play any other sports? Did she try anything else?
There was just too big of a time commitment.
Yeah.
She tried diving. She was really good at diving. She loved diving. And they actually wanted her to be on the dive team too, but the schedules just didn't click. And gymnastics was her first. There was no question that was her passion. She loved gymnastics. We often said that she would have been a coach someday. We're sure of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what was that like for the family? Were you guys all typically got to go together to tournaments and competitions and things? Or?
We did. Actually, Sam and Maddie were really good about supporting each other. They didn't always do it, not begrudgingly, but there were a few of Sam's birthdays that she spent at a gymnastics meet, which usually ended up with us having to do some extra presents afterwards for that.
Sure.
Just because Sam's birthday was in February and gymnastics season was January through April.
Yeah.
But no, Maddie was very supportive and went to all of Sam's plays and performances and everything. And Sam was at as many of Maddie's meets as she could be. And yeah, they were really good about, even though they didn't necessarily share the same passions, they had the passion for supporting each other, which I always loved.
Great.
Yeah.
And obviously, then you're spending a lot of time with the gym family, and how does that relationship? How did that grow over the years of spending so much time with Gym Kinetics and the group there?
That was fantastic. Still to this day, I think our closest friends are gymnastics parents that Maddie did gymnastics with their kids. And it's just odd how it came together. It's just you spend so much time together and you're waiting to pick up your kid or something, and you strike up a conversation. And then it led to, hey, want to grab a beer after this? And, oh, yeah, that's great. And we just became super close to this group of friends, and they've been with us through thick and thin, and we've been with them. And it's cool to see their kids now doing collegiate gymnastics, or one of Maddie's best friends graduated from college already, and, she did college gymnastics, and it's just it became such a close group of friends, and their kids became Maddie's group of friends. So it was fun because we'd get together as a giant group, and the parents would get together and have a blast, and the kids would get together and have a blast. And usually it's the kids are going, you're going trying to grab and drag the kids out of a party, like, come on, kids, let's go. We got to go. They were dragging us out. They're like, it's midnight. We have to go home. We have to get to bed. Okay. But
for the older kids, Sam and a couple of the other older siblings who were all into music and theater and everything, they would end up putting together shows.
Yeah, that we would
so
all.
somewhere around midnight, we'd all end up having to watch shows that these kids would put together.
Oh, that's great.
They had fun.
Nothing like it, right?
But then the gym itself was just so supportive. I mean, I thought it was commonplace that the owner of the gym comes to your kids, communion, right? Isn't that normal? No? I was like, really?
And Jim, you're talking about Jim Frederickson.
Jim
yeah.
Kinetics. Him and his wife were at family events. They were Maddie's graduation parties. The other coaches there, we would hang out with and watch Bears games with. I mean, it was a community. It really was. And we're so blessed that we had that. We're so blessed that Maddie had a great program to go in and developed her as a person as much as it developed her as an athlete. But it gave us so much too. We're just really lucky to have Gym Kinetics.
Yeah. So let's maybe get into her high school years. So Maddie got into high school. She's still doing gymnastics. Where's her kind of gymnastics career at that point?
So her sophomore year of high school, she was actually offered a full ride scholarship to the University of Illinois at Chicago, which was amazing. And it was all those years of work. It was what she had been working for. And we fell in love with the coaches. She fell in love with the coaches at UIC. And so we went through, part of her sophomore year, all of her junior year. That's where she was going. Everything was all set.
So they give you they can't actually sign the letter of intent until their senior or the summer of their senior year. So
November of their senior year.
Okay. And then, so she verbally committed. She said, I'm in, I'm agreeing. And she stopped so she didn't really sign a letter of intent at that point yet because she was too young, but.
Yeah. So come September of her senior year of high school, and we get a phone call one day, and it's her right after school, and she's sobbing. UIC decided to close their men's and women's gymnastics program. They rescinded her scholarship. They rescinded the other 3 scholarship offers that they had for incoming freshmen. And
any reason? Do they say, is it just not
financial?
Getting enough?
It was, that was their reasoning behind it. But, the coaches were devastated.
Sure.
And so, so there's no opportunity now for another scholarship. They're all committed. So she just didn't know what to do. And we kind of went back through old emails and old recruitment stuff. And there were a couple of opportunities for her to do another D1, another Division I, possibly a walk-on somewhere. There were a couple other offers out there. But she had been contacted by University of Wisconsin lacrosse's coach, D3 school. And it was just it was the only D3 email that she had gotten where they had followed up with her and said, hey, if anything changes, come see us. And we're like, hey, maybe we should go for a car trip.
And I'm like, I know lacrosse. It's God's country up there. It's beautiful.
I grew up
there.
30 minutes from
Oh, did
lacrosse.
you really?
Oh my gosh.
Until I was 10, yeah.
Oh wow, yeah.
So you know.
Sure.
It's so beautiful. And I told Maddie, I
is.
said, the very least, we get a nice weekend out of it. It's gorgeous up there. You're gonna enjoy it. And so we did. She agreed to go up and take a look. Just take a look.
Begrudgingly again. I mean, she sat in the back seat of the car with her headphones on, kind of with a scowl on her face the entire drive. And we got up there and we met with the coach, the head coach, Casey Crawford. And within about 10 minutes, the shell started to break away and she started to soften. And by the end of the visit, we went to lunch afterwards and she looked at us and she goes, "This is it." She goes, "This is the first time since everything happened with UIC that I've felt wanted."
Wow.
And she goes, "This is my home." And yeah, that was.
She said right
That
there.
was her home.
She's like, "I'm in. I'm in." And we were a little taken back because at that point it's like, well, I didn't think this was going to go that well. Maybe
Right.
we should. You
And
sure
no
you don't want to
athletic
look? You sure you don't want to look
scholarship,
at somewhere? Yeah. Well, there was an athletic scholarship, but that our hope was just that she would find a home that she
Right.
would be happy at, and we knew we weren't under any idea that she was going to be an Olympic gymnast or anything. Gymnastics was a means to getting her a good education and happiness and find her way. She didn't want to give up yet gymnastics, so she wanted to keep doing it, and this was a spot she could do it. And if she went to a Division I school, she might have been a specialist where she'd only be doing one event. Up there, she was going to be an all-around gymnast. They said, "You're going to compete every event. You'll be like our superstar." It's
Wow.
not very often that a Division I gymnast drops in our lap, so we're like really happy to have you. And she was happy to be there. And I remember there was one, and on the tour of the campus, that time I knew that this coach was right for her. Not only did the coach do all the research and learn about what her skills were and how she can improve her, but I remember it was up there. It was the weekend where the Packers were playing the Vikings, and UW lacrosse, like half of the students are Vikings fans, half of the students are Packer fans. And so she's like, the coach says, "Well, wait, you're from Chicago. Are you a Bears fan?" She says, "I'm a Steelers fan." And I remember
Safe
the coach
play,
going,
safe play.
"You're going to be okay here."
Wow, that's funny.
But yeah, we loved lacrosse. She loved lacrosse. They had it in like a rec center that they had just completed a year or two earlier. They're like, you can rent mountain bikes, you can rent kayaks, you can go. And she was our outdoors girl. She loved being outside. And she saw that, her eyes lit up. She's like, so like if I'm bored on like a Saturday, I could just go rent a kayak. Yeah. She's
And
like,
and it's amazing that competitive gymnast, totally our outdoors girl, and she had asthma her entire life.
Wow.
She was diagnosed at the age of 18 months old, predominantly environmentally triggered, obviously not athletically, not exercise triggered, but environmentally triggered. And
with all the exercise, that never bothered it. All the gym.
nope.
it didn't help it, but it
Well,
didn't.
the chalk dust.
The chalk dust
did.
definitely got,
okay.
yeah.
And we called her the chalk monster because she would come out of practice and she would be covered in chalk. And we'd look at all the other kids coming out and none of them would be covered in chalk. And we're like, how do
She
you
loved
manage
chalk.
this? She goes, I like the chalk. Okay, good for you, kid.
But she just never let asthma stop her, and we never let it stop her. So, yeah.
So you left, or you visited UW lacrosse. Was there a commitment then at that point that she was going to go there?
Yep. And being a D3 school, you don't have like a signing ceremony and you sign your letter of intent or anything. It's like a verbal commitment. And they don't have a big ceremony and everything. But I've got to say, Gym Kinetics, they wanted to make a big deal out of it because they're like, you know what? You earned a Division I scholarship and you chose to go D3, and we're going to have a signing ceremony. And it was just so nice. They had in the lobby, they set up a table. Jim went out to or ordered from the bookstore at UWL a giant Eagles flag and
nice.
University of Wisconsin lacrosse sweatshirts or shirts they had on that day, him and Wendy, and they had bottles of like grape juice out, like a champagne toast, and they brought all the kids from the gym out to applaud.
And just to talk about the family orientation, they did it in January because Sam was at going to school at NYU, and so she was in New York City at the time, and so they wanted to make sure Sam was going to be there for it too.
Wow.
And so they checked with us, and they're like, "When is Sam going to be home for the holidays?" And so they held the ceremony while Sam was in from New York.
That's awesome.
For January. Yeah.
Wow. So so now we got to January of our senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Where do we go from there?
Well, I'm going to back up just a little bit because we're in that group where both of our kids started their high school career at North and moved to East.
Oh, sure.
When North closed, and we were probably we're with that group of parents who were very upset that North closed, and we thought it was going to be the end of the world. And oh my goodness, our kids are never going to succeed because of this, and they're going to be stunted for life. And I'm sure there were kids that went through that. But I have to say, our experience in the transition was phenomenal with North to East. Sam was the heir apparent in the theatrical program at North. She was going to get the lead in the senior musical, and there was no doubt about it. And then the move to East, she's probably not going to get the lead. Ended up getting the lead, but it's going to be a horrible experience. She had an amazing transition, it would have been her junior and senior year. Maddie had her sophomore, junior, and senior year at East, and we couldn't have been happier at East. So Maddie, on that senior year, she was gearing up for the whole, your grand finale, the prom, the graduation, and all that, and
tell me again, when was the transition? What year were the girls when North closed?
So Sam graduated. They were 2015, 16 would have been the year that they transitioned.
Okay.
Because Sam graduated in 2018, so she spent 2016, 17, and 2017, 18 at East.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I assume. So Maddie would drive her and two of her teammates to the gym from Lincoln Way East every day after school. So, everything's going along. She's committed to UWL. We've had the signing ceremony. And then March, one day before she's supposed to finally go visit her sister in New York for the first time, we were going to let her fly out there on her own, by herself, spend the weekend with Sam.
And I remember
because it was Easter break.
It was the Thursday, the start of March Madness.
Yep.
Because normally I take that day off and stay home and watch the opening, or work from home and watch the opening round of the NCAA basketball tournament.
Right.
So I remember it was a Thursday, and it was the Thursday of March Madness.
Right. And the girls were Maddie was going to be on spring break the following week, so that's why we were going to let her go out to New York City. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we get a phone call. And some woman, I never found out who she was, on the other end of the phone says, "I'm here. Your daughter has been in a horrible accident. You need to get here right away." And I'm like, "Okay, where's here?" And she said, "I'm at the corner of St. Francis and LaGrange." And I said, "I'll be right there." I hung up the phone. I yelled to Frank. I said, "Maddie's been in a car accident, St. Francis and LaGrange. Meet me there." And I'm out the door and gone. And I pull up, and they've got the street closed off. There's fire trucks everywhere, and I see her car, and it is just totaled. It
rolled three
times.
And landed on the grass in front of.
Right.
So she's heading north on 45.
On 45.
Yep. And so it's just after, would it have been just before the intersection?
She was going through the intersection, and the person going through, and it was one of those, like, it's a yellow light. And so she's halfway through, and this girl turned into her and spun her, and she slid into the curb, and then the car rolled and landed on top of the lawn in front of that.
Right.
I think it's a Jimmy John's or something.
Something
over
right there,
wow.
Right. And so I just park in the middle of St. Francis Road and get out of my car, and one of the one of the kind Frankfurt firemen must have seen the panic on my face, and he looked at me and said, "Mom?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he said, come with me, come with me. He said, "Everything's fine." And I'm thinking, how can everything be fine? You know, I'm looking at this scene. And he took me over to the ambulance, and all 3 girls were sitting in the ambulance, sitting up,
Wow.
bumps and bruises and scratches, but they were all okay. Which
Wow.
was,
What was their reaction when when Maddie
they were in
saw you?
shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were in shock. And I think,
And I think I said, I'm glad they're gymnasts. They learned how to roll.
right.
Because, I mean, from what Maddie told us afterwards and the other girls told us is it happened so fast that they just went with what happened. And then when they, you know, I shouldn't say came to, but when they realized they were, you know, stopped, they kicked out the back window to get out because they didn't know how, because the doors were jammed. So they got out. All 3 of them got out, and they were standing on the side of LaGrange. So when the cops and the fire department showed up, they were saying it's so bad that they were looking for where they were ejected. And they thought these 3 kids standing on the side of the road saw it. They're like, no, we were the ones in there.
Wow.
Yeah, they couldn't
So
believe
they were
it.
like,
Yeah,
wow,
they couldn't believe
somebody
it.
was watching over you.
Right.
That's amazing.
It really was amazing. And it obviously it shook them up. Because when I got there, I went and the fire, one of the firemen grabbed me and said, rushed me over to the ambulance, and I just peeked my head in, and they were just staring straight ahead. All 3 of the kids were sitting there staring like they were still trying to wrap their head around what just happened.
Right.
And
But any injuries? Any?
nope.
Nothing serious, no.
No,
Wow.
I
Bumps
think,
and bruises and
Maddie had the
scratches.
least of any of them. The other 2 girls had some, I think, scratches and bruises.
Some
but
cuts. They all ended up competing regionals like 2 weeks later.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we have no idea who this woman was that called us, but she said, but Maddie said she grabbed her phone and said, "Dial your mom," and she dialed Cyndi, and that's
Yeah.
how she.
What a
and-
scary phone call.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Wow.
And so we, that actually, we say all the time. That's how Maddie really. Well, she brought up to us. She had a conversation with us about how important organ donation was to her.
Where did that come from? Do you know?
We think she was just spooked, like she was just freaked out because of what happened, and she was laying in her bedroom and she's going through in her head, well, what if this didn't happen as good? What if the outcome was different? Maddie was always we always said she had a servant's heart. She was the type of kid that she just, if anybody needed help, she went to help them. Whether she knew what she was doing or not, she'd still try to help, you know. And she volunteered. She was an adaptive PE leader at Lincoln Way East with special needs kids her whole career.
Sam would say she followed her
Yeah,
into that.
Sam did.
Sam was an adaptive PE leader too.
See, our family has leaders
Yeah,
and
I'm seeing a
followers.
pattern here.
But she volunteered with the special needs kids at the gym for birthday parties to help whenever there was a special needs kid part of a birthday party. She would help there or help with the coaching. She was just that kind of kid. And so I think she was just thinking of herself, like, how could this, if this didn't go good, how could I still help people? And that's when she came into the living room and she said, I think also is Cyndi's nephew had a liver transplant a few years earlier. And so we talked a lot about it around the kitchen table. Mm-hmm. And, they didn't interject much, the kids, but, they hear. And they were listening and they heard us talking about how, lucky Evan was technically got 2 livers before he was 2.
Wow.
And, and how lucky he was and the donor families and blah, blah, blah. And we talked a lot about that. So I think that also weighed on her mind. And she came in and I don't even remember what we were doing. We were watching TV probably. And she walked in and she said, hey, I got to talk to you. I was like, okay. That was the other thing. She was just a barge right in and I got to talk to you. Okay, well, what? She goes, that car accident made me think that if something like that were to ever happen again and things didn't work out as well, I want something good to come from something bad. So I want to be an organ donor. And I was like, no, we are not having this conversation. We don't talk about death. We don't talk. It's morbid. Nope.
Did you think it was like a fear thing on her part, or what? Why do you think you had the reaction?
I didn't know, but I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was like so uncomfortable.
And I think in hindsight, so she got her driver's license right before Illinois passed the Drive for Life Act. So she wasn't asked when she turned 16 if she wanted to be an organ donor on her license, and she knew she was turning 18.
I'm sorry. Can you just tell? I don't fully know what that was.
Sure. So the Drive for Life Act was passed in the state of Illinois, and it was enacted in January of 2018. And basically what it did is it opened up the ability for 16 and 17-year-olds to register on Illinois' organ donor registry. So so instead of waiting until they were 18 to be asked if they wanted to register to be a donor on their driver's license, they're now being asked at 16 years old. But until they turn 18, parental consent is still required in order for them to be a donor.
Okay.
So she just missed that. So she was not a registered donor on her driver's license.
Wow.
So it was an uncomfortable conversation to have, and then it was only a few minutes. I mean, it was short, but we were uncomfortable, and she was that type of kid. You know, she's like, "No, you have to listen to me," and we did okay, we understand. Check, we hear you. We're never gonna have to worry about it, but thanks for telling us.
Yeah.
And
little did we know.
Yeah.
But at that time, it didn't really affect you guys. You weren't jumping out. I mean, maybe you were already. I mean, did you even know if you were organ donors at the time? Or
yeah, we were.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something it was something on our driver's license that we never really gave a second thought to.
Right.
And, we're glad that she mentioned it at the time. We're like, okay, well, that's good to know. But like I said, it was a short conversation. And
yeah.
But then she went on after that. She had a wonderful prom and wonderful end to her senior year, graduation. She was ecstatic, and Sam was in for it, and
Yeah.
Because Sam was
in New York.
1 year ahead.
Yes.
She 1 year ahead.
1 year ahead. Yeah.
So she had spent her first year.
Just finished up her
NYU.
freshman year at NYU.
All right.
And then came home for the summer, and Maddie graduated, went to gymnastics camp for a week up at UWL, got to know her teammates, got to know her coaches, came home ready to start college that day if she could. She's like, can
Really
I just
took
stay
to it.
here?
She liked it, huh?
Yeah, can I just
Oh, yeah.
stay here? Yeah. But she had to come home and have a graduation party. So
Yeah, I remember her texting us from UWL saying, can I just stay here?
yeah.
No.
Not yet. Soon. Not yet. Soon. And and so, Sam always says Maddie checked off so much in that last few months. She did.
Really?
She did a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Like any examples or anything
Her
that sticks
graduation
out?
party, for example, it was the first time Frank's entire family had been all together
Really?
in years.
Wow.
There was a wedding in the family, and so everybody just happened to be home that weekend. So we planned Maddie's graduation party around that.
And we got the big giant family photo,
Yeah,
And she got to be in the middle of the photo because she was the.
that's what she always did. And she got to spend a week at her college, and she got to live in the dorms and meet her teammates. And she did a lot.
Obviously, the whole graduation and prom. She had a blast at prom, and she was.
How about her and Sam? Anything they did special together during
She
that
got to
summer?
go to New York. Even though she had that horrible car accident, he argued with me. He was like, "This is not a good idea." And I said, "You know what? It's the best thing for her. Let her get her mind off the accident." Yeah, she went to New York City with her sister that
nice.
weekend, and
It's probably a good connection for them. Huh?
it was they got to be in New York City by themselves at
What were you guys thinking?
Yeah, I know exactly.
at 17 and 19 years old. Go figure.
Wow.
Now Sam is very, very mature and very responsible, so that there's another difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the graduation party and
the graduation party, and then right after the graduation party was a week before her 18th birthday. So was it a week?
About a week before,
week and a half, maybe. And I had gone out of town on a business trip, and I came home that Wednesday, which would have been 3 days before her birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember I came home and it was like mass chaos at the house. Cyndi was running, doing something for work, and Sam was going somewhere, and Maddie was going to a concert that night, and with one of her teammates and a couple of friends and a parent, and they were going to see Shawn Mendes at the Allstate Arena. And it was one of those where I remember coming home and it was our paths crossed, and she said, we're going early because we're stopping for dinner, and all right, see you later, love you, bye. And then Sam had some homework or something, and then it was a nice quiet evening. And then we got a call, it's about 8 o'clock at night, from the mom who was kind of like the chaperone of this group. And all she said was that Maddie passed out at the concert. And she said, you should come up here. And so we were like, okay. I mean, probably.
And just so we don't sound like horrible parents to have such a reaction like that, but this was not the first time that Maddie had a bad asthma attack. And her 8th grade trip to Great America, she ended up in the hospital because she had a really bad asthma attack and they couldn't get it under control. So
no way the expectation is of anything but just kind of an incident.
Yeah. No, at this point, it's just she had a bad asthma attack. She's got to go into the hospital, get a couple of albuterol treatments, and she'll be fine.
The mom said she's with the paramedics right now. So we're like, well, okay, they're being cared for. That's good. So we hop in the car and we start to drive up there.
To Rosemont, because they were at the Rosemont Theater, or the Allstate Arena.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we're in the car and it's been 20, 25 minutes. And I said, this is really odd that I haven't gotten a call from the paramedics, because when this has happened before, usually somebody has contacted us and said, everything's okay, we're heading to this hospital, whatever. And so I called for Linda back and I said, have you heard anything? What's going on? And she goes, I don't know, but it looks really bad. You should call the hospital. Okay. So I call the hospital, which was Resurrection Hospital, and I get patched through right to the ER. And whoever it was on the phone, I don't know if it was a doctor or a nurse, they're like, you need to get up here. She's already coded twice.
Oh my gosh.
She coded in the they found her unresponsive, and she coded in the ambulance on the way there, and she was coding again in the ER when we were calling.
And so, needless to say, I found out how fast my car could go because I just gunned it, and
I don't think we remember how we got there.
So we pull in, and they're waiting for us, and they rush us into this side room that was next to, it was like a consultation room, and I remember there was a doctor, a nurse, and a Rosemont cop.
Yeah.
That were there. And they said when we found her, she was unresponsive. She was clutching her asthma inhaler. She wasn't breathing. She was coded. We intubated her. We resuscitated her. And then she crashed again when we were trying to get her on the gurney. And we did CPR, and we got her here, stable enough to get her here. And the doctors are like, telling us this, and then all of a sudden somebody comes in and said she's crashing again. So they go rushing in there, and then the nurse said there's another ER bay next to hers. She goes, you can't go by her, but you can go in that bay next to her. And so we did. We went in there, and and then when she was stable, they said you could come in, and they had put a chest tube in her. And they rolled her over. And when they rolled her over, her eyes were open. I remember seeing that. And I remember thinking to myself, that's unusual. And I said to the doctor, I said, you must have her pretty heavily sedated. And the doctor, I know he was being kind. He just said, no, there's no sedation. That's one tough girl you got there. And I remember thinking, I don't care how tough you are. There's no way you're putting a chest tube in and with
Not flinching.
and no sedation. And so I think I knew, I think you knew at the time we talked afterwards and said, yeah, I think that was the point we knew she
Bad.
wasn't there. Something wasn't right here. And
We weren't going to admit that at that point,
Right.
but I think we both knew in our hearts that this wasn't good.
and that hospital, they were amazing too, because the doctor said, we're a little bit over our heads here. And he's like, right next town over in Park Ridge is Lutheran General Hospital. They have a pediatric intensive care unit. She's technically not 18 yet. She's got a couple more days. He said she's technically still a peds patient. We can medevac her over there and she'd get better care. And we're like, do it, anything. And so they did. They got her stable. The helicopter came, picked her up. We got in our car and drove over there. I think we beat the helicopter.
Wow.
But yeah, so I mean, they say what they have to do is close O'Hare's airspace whenever
So it
there's
takes
some
a little
medical.
while.
So it takes a little while because they got to take any plane that's in a holding pattern down before they can put the helicopter up.
Oh, wow.
And then they got a clear shot. And so when we got there, they were pretty straightforward with us that this was really, really serious, and that I mean, I hate to make a joke out of it, but duh. I mean, of course it's serious.
Yeah.
We knew it was serious, but they're like, no, this is like really bad. And so they were prepping us for what would happen. But I think it was a few
As
hours.
much as you can prep.
Yeah, a few hours later, I think they came and said, okay, we've got her stabilized. She's in a bed. She's on a ventilator. She's on life support, but she's, you can go
Be with her.
be with her.
And do you think at that point it's a positive?
Somewhat.
Are you thinking it's a positive improvement? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think at that
there's
point,
so many things that go through your head at that point. You want something positive
right.
Sure. Yeah.
to hang your hat on.
Yeah.
And you're preparing yourself for, we're being told that there's probably brain damage. And so we're like, okay, we're in my head, we're preparing for that.
Yeah.
And then, we were in the room with her, and the nurses are coming in and they're doing checks, like they're running something up her foot to see if there was any reflex, or they check her eyes and shine the light in there, and we're like, man, there's nothing. She's just laying there. It's, you want to have hope, but then you see those kinds of things, and they're trying not to tell you, but we can figure it out.
Right. At this point, I'm thinking coma.
So the next morning, so that we made it through the night, and that morning I told Cyndi, I said, we have to let the people at the gym know. That's our family. That's, Gym Kinetics, that's our family. So one of the moms, who's a friend of ours.
At this point, we had Frank's sister, we had called Frank's sisters, obviously, and his sister and brother-in-law actually drove out to our house, picked up Sam.
She was still home.
She was home by herself.
Because we didn't think at the time it was serious. So she's like, I've got homework. And it's like, she was taking a summer class.
Stay here, do your homework.
Yeah.
She was taking a summer class at the university where I work. And so Patty and Rich came in, picked Sam up, and brought her home with them. So at least she wasn't home alone at that point. Then we had to start contacting everybody else.
So then we had to contact everybody else. So we called our friend Deanna, who's a nurse and part of the Gym Kinetics family, and we said, we can't make all these calls. Can you just let somebody know? Let everybody know. And she's like, okay, I will. And I'm not kidding you. An hour later, the nurse came into our room and she said, you have a visitor? We said, we have what? We have a visitor. How do we have a visitor at 7 o'clock in the morning? We're in Park Ridge. And in walked Jim Fredrickson. And he walked in. He did a 180,
saw her.
turned around, and then a minute later came back in. He just couldn't. He saw her. He just couldn't. He had the process it. He went back out of the room, composed himself, came back in, and
He never left.
he never left. He never left that hospital or our side until we went home. He wouldn't sleep in the room with us. He'd go sleep in the lobby of the hospital. And when we'd wake up in the morning, he would be there with a cup of coffee for each of us and a donut or something.
He's
saying,
Italian.
You gotta
He
eat.
made sure we ate.
Yeah, you got to eat. You got to eat. And yeah, he was there the whole time. Every time Maddie had to go down for a test, he'd tell us, "You sit. You have a cup of coffee. I'm going to make
Relax
sure
a bit.
I'm going to make sure she's not alone. She's never going to be alone."
Wow.
I'm like, okay. And yeah, so the next day was her 18th birthday, and we had planned on doing an 18th birthday party for her at the house. So we put the word out because we kind of knew what was going. They at that point they had told us she's probably not going to make it, and so we put the word out. Said if you want to see her and you want to have a birthday party, we're having a birthday party here at the hospital. And next thing we knew, there had to be 30 or 40 gymnasts, girls and family coming in and out of that hospital. And I'm sure
Coaches.
there were violations of so many different codes at that hospital.
Can't even imagine.
But they were just so
They were great.
compassionate, and they just go. And every time it get a little loud, the nurse would just come in and go, like, okay. And they were just the most amazing hospital, the most amazing.
The nursing staff was incredible. We're still in touch with several of them.
Wow.
They kind of became family.
I bet.
So we celebrated her 18th birthday in the hospital. Halfway through her 18th birthday, they did the first brain death test. So they go through this arduous testing, and they allowed us to stay and watch it if we wanted, but they warned us, and we went and we stayed for it, and it was horrific. But it's basically they have to see if she's going to breathe on her own. So they take her off the ventilator. They do different blood tests. They do different sensory tests. They squirt water into her eyes, and it was just horrible. But they have to do that, we understand, to see if there's any brain activity, any brainstem activity, and anything, any sign. They would not have done or a second test, but they didn't get any signs. So being a PEDS patient, they had to do a second test. So we won't go into that whole story, but they did a second brain death test about 24 hours later, and that's when she was declared brain dead. So there was no brainstem activity. There was no brain activity. And that's at that point is when Cyndi and I basically said, we need to talk to people about organ donation, because that was a conversation we had several months ago, and that's what we want to do.
That was in that moment.
Actually, I shouldn't say it. Cyndi remembered that conversation first and said, "Do you remember that conversation Maddie had?" And I said, "Oh my goodness! Like, how did that? Wow! Like,
Yeah.
How did that come about?" And yeah, so we have to do this. And then they had mentioned to us that like only 1 in every 1,000 people can actually that register to be a donor. 3,000?
3 in every 1,000.
3 in every 1,000 people who register to be a donor can actually be a donor, because you have to die in a certain way and your organs have to be preserved and oxygenated blood and all that. So you basically have to pretty
Be
much
in a hospital on life support.
on life support. And so they said, that looks pretty good. So yeah, we'll introduce you to the organ donation people, which they did. And
And a whole new journey began at that point.
yeah, that's when it totally changed our lives. I mean, obviously the death changed our lives. There's no, I mean, it's hard to even fathom, but yeah, but the actual organ donation, let's call it piece to that puzzle, changed our lives as well, because we realized that what was Maddie's passion had to become our passion. So
Kind of a way to carry on.
well, it all started
was.
really because I wanted to be able to just talk about Maddie again, that she was gone. And I wanted as many opportunities as I could to talk about Maddie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any day I get to talk about Maddie's a good day. And so that was always that's how the whole thing got started. But we also found the hope that donation gives you in that.
What
moment.
was, can you guys talk a little bit about like what some of your process was to deal with it? What Sam's, like how Sam struggled with, like
Yeah,
as a
absolutely.
parent, you can't even imagine how you deal with that.
For about the first year, I think we were pretty much numb, even though we had started the foundation and everything else. It was, in those moments in the hospital, it's going to sound weird, but the day that morning we left the hospital after Maddie had her donation surgery, we said it felt weird. We had kind of made a home there. We were with her. She was still with us. We had a flag. They do a flag raising ceremony at the hospitals. Whenever there's a donor, they raise a Gift of Hope organ donation flag to indicate
really?
that there's a donor in waiting at the hospital. And Jim, of course, put the word out, and we had probably about 100 gymnasts there for that.
Amazing.
I remember we walked. The pediatric ICU was on the second floor, and you walked out, and there was like this little walkway that overlooked the front entrance to the hospital. And Sam and I came out of the pediatric ICU, and we heard this din of young gymnasts. And Sam and I both went back into the door, and we're like, okay, deep breaths. We had to kind of prepare ourselves to go out into that. But there were just all of these things that we did that we got to honor Maddie. And, we've met a lot of parents who have lost children who didn't get to do all those things because we had that extra time with her while she was on life support, waiting to be a donor. And so, we were very blessed to have that extra time. And a lot of people think that wouldn't be, that would be hard. But for us, I think it was some of, not the best moment of our life, but it was good. It was good to be there with her.
Did it provide anything? It was like a closure. I mean, I don't know if you call it closure or an acceptance, or
I think acceptance is the right word. It gave us that time to kind of process the tragedy that had hit us and start to say, and we had time to say goodbye, and with her still there, and we had the opportunity to hug her one more time and hold her one more time and do all of these things with her. Remember my brother-in-law, when we gathered everybody around to tell them what was happening, he just broke down, and I just said, baby steps. And that was kind of still is our mantra, right? Even to this day, whenever things get hard, we just go, baby steps. You just, when people ask, you have really two choices every morning. You can either curl up in bed in a fetal position and just say, I'm done. I'm not facing anything today. Or you get out of bed and you take a deep breath and you decide, okay, how am I going to move forward today? What is today's purpose going to be?
Yeah. So
Maddie's organs saved 3 lives.
Wow.
And her heart and her liver went to one recipient, a woman in her 30s. One kidney went to a woman in her 70s, and one kidney went to a woman in her 20s. And her corneas went to 2 different people, one of which I'm so proud of. Maddie gave sight to a little 2-year-old child in Michigan. And her tissue donations, skin, bone, have gone as far away as Seoul, South Korea.
Unbelievable.
And so,
how do you? I mean, I assume they're tracking. They let you know all this.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Organ Procurement Organization, Gift of Hope. In our case, it's Gift of Hope. There's 57 of them around the country, but in our territory, it's Gift of Hope. They were amazing.
Is there ever any connection or any interaction between the?
There can be.
Yeah.
It's rarer than you think.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can, you had asked about Sam.
Yeah.
So before we get too far outside of the story, this all happened at the end of June. Sam went back to school in August. She went back to New York City and went back to NYU.
Wow.
And that was her decision. We gave her the option. But she not only went back to NYU, she was in their musical theater program. And their sophomore project in that program was to put together a benefit concert as a class. And so we had just started the Maddog Strong Foundation. And so in December of that year, Sam and her class at NYU put together a benefit concert to benefit Maddog Strong.
Wow.
Yeah,
How
which
awesome.
was amazing. And
What
then,
was that? Can you talk at all about?
Yeah,
Were you guys there? Or were you able to be there?
Yeah, we
flew
went
out
out there
for
for it. It was called Heart to Heart. They got the hall. They actually did 2 shows. They did an afternoon show and an evening show. Each student either did a solo cover song, or they did small group cover songs. Sam did. She dedicated.
Angel from Montgomery. She dedicated to her sister.
Yeah. Who always has the best seat in the house, as Sam says. And they raised almost $3,000 for Maddog Strong out from that benefit concert.
And the thing that I was happiest about is we got a chance to speak at the end and do our little pitch for organ donation. And I do an exercise at the end of every time we do give a speech. And I basically tell people to picture the person they love the most in this world. And God forbid they were in about to lose their life, and the only thing that was going to save their life was a donated organ transplant. And by the grace of God, the surgeon comes in and says, "We've got this organ and it's a perfect match, but you have to let us know, would you accept it?" And so I ask all of them, "Would you accept it?" I said, because we've done a lot of these speeches and I've yet to meet anybody who says, "No, I wouldn't accept it." So I say to you, if you're willing to accept it, you damn well better be willing to give it. So I think we registered a bunch of people that night. Yeah. So that, to me, beyond the money, was the most, impactful
Absolutely.
For me. We changed hearts and minds.
So talk a little bit about the foundation, and obviously you want to raise awareness for giving, being an organ donor. What does that involve, and what are you guys doing? What's, what goes into that?
So I think one of the most interesting statistics that we've learned is that roughly about 96% of Americans have a favorable opinion of organ and tissue donation, but less than 60% are registered. Wow. So there's a disconnect somewhere. People think it's a good thing, but it's a good thing for somebody else to do and not necessarily them. And, we learned from our experience with Maddie having the conversation with us that that's an important piece to this puzzle. And we really believe that young people are going to be able to change this space. They're going to be able to make the difference. But in order to do that, they have to know the facts. They have to understand and be educated about donation so that they don't buy into the myths and the misconceptions. And once we treat them like adults and we educate them like adults, then they're going to become adults and make it the right informed decision and have that conversation with their loved ones. And that's sort of become the mission of our organization.
And your story, or Maddie's story, really says that it's not just for adults. It's not for people when you get down the line to figure out. It's like right away, it's, yeah.
And we've learned a lot over the past, we're going almost 5 years now. And we've learned so much about this space and about all the people that are in this organ donation field and transplantation field and recipients and donor families and the science behind it and everything. And we just keep coming back to the fact that, where everybody else in this space thinks that the registration is when things end, like, okay, that's the goal. We've got them to register. To us, that's just the start of the process. Getting them to register is the easy part, in my opinion. The hard part is getting them then to have a conversation and remove that taboo that we can't talk about it. Like me, it's morbid. We don't talk about that stuff. No, we need to be able to talk about that stuff. We need to be able to have these conversations. Don't just check the box, have the conversation. And so that's why we're focused on the education side and making sure people can have that conversation. Don't just register. It's great to get you to register. I'm happy. But you're never going to advocate it. The registration is just something you can change now. Like we can get them something to do now. I want to see this change to where in the future, there's no question. It's like, you don't have to ask somebody, are you a registered donor? Because they're like, of course I'm a registered donor. Right. Isn't everybody?
What kind of objections do you ever hear objections to people?
A lot.
Religion's a big one. A lot of people are under the misconception that that their religion does not allow for donation. Either that's there's a problem with the burial, but every major religion views organ donation as your last act of charity. And
you're both very involved in part of St. Mary's.
Yes.
And obviously they're big supporters of what you guys
They're
are
amazing.
doing.
They are amazing. Father Dindo came to us and asked us if we would do an altar call one Sunday. This was 2 years ago, and then considered doing a registration table in the narthex after Masses. And we said, of course we would. So we went, and I gave the altar call after every Mass, gave just a little short, comment about organ donation. And then I said the reason I know so much about organ donation is because, we're donor parents. And I tell a little of Maddie's story. And then we manned the table afterwards. That was the single largest registration event we have ever done in our 5 years of doing this. And it's because there are so many people that came to that table and said, I always thought Catholics couldn't be donors.
Right.
And we're
Wow,
like,
really?
absolutely.
Right.
And they said, when you even said what the last 3 popes have said, it really rang true that I should be doing this. And then, we had a lot of people that say, but I'm older and, I'm probably too old to be an organ donor. And I'd
That's
say,
another one.
And I'd say, did you know that the oldest organ donor was 96 years old?
Wow.
And the oldest tissue donor was 107 years old.
Oh my gosh.
mean,
Does anything change
and I tell them,
as you
my
get
whole
older?
theory is the doctors know far more than you or I do. Sign up and let them figure it out when it's time.
Yeah.
If they can use anything, let them use it.
Wow.
We are just so blessed. St. Mary has been so wonderful. It inspired us to create something we called the CODA Crusade, Catholic Organ Donation Advocacy Crusade. And so we're putting it together now, a 60 to 90-minute seminar that can be done at parishes all across the country.
Wow.
And we want to inform Catholics, because we're Catholics. We know that, and that's the reason we picked that religion over any other religion. But we know the faith, and we know what the Catechism of the Church says, and so we're going to roll that out in 2024.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Where else do you guys speak? I know I got to meet you guys through the Lions Club, and you came and gave your presentation there. We have a couple of members who are very touched by organ donations. But where else are you guys speaking or sharing your message?
Wherever we get invited, but I think for example, our neighbors do Ghouls on Glasgow, and so they do a big Halloween scene, a big Halloween space every year. And for the past 2 years, they've raised money for Maddog. And so this year they approached us and said, hey, do you want to do the trunk or treat in downtown Frankfurt? And we're like, okay, sure, why not? And people ask us, why are you at a Halloween trunk or treat talking about organ donation? And it's like, well, because nobody else is. Right?
Very true. Yeah, good point.
If our mission is to remove the taboo and say you can talk about organ donation anywhere, well, we're living proof of that.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't
We'll
have to be a
anywhere.
health fair. It doesn't have to be at a hospital. It can be anywhere. And so we speak at universities. We speak a lot to future healthcare leaders, both nursing and pre-med. Anytime we get an opportunity to do that, we speak at high schools, community organizations. Like I said, wherever we can get invited, we're happy to come and share our story with anyone.
That's awesome. How about, can you share, maybe think of any of the, what you call maybe your victories or things that experiences with Maddog Strong that you've looked back and be like, this is really, representing or what we want to do?
Well, I'll give you an example, and it technically wasn't a Maddog Strong Foundation initiative, but it was a personal initiative of mine. Maddie was my hunting buddy. So Maddie and I went hunting together, fished together, and
Maddie was a better shot than Fran.
she's a much better shot.
She was good.
She was.
There's
much
that
better.
athletic
I remember
thing again.
I had a friend who asked me. He said, "I don't know who taught her how to shoot, but I know who didn't teach her how to shoot." So it was a personal mission of mine that I wanted to. Where most people register to be organ donors is when they get their driver's license at the DMV. Now, most people renew their driver's license every 4 years. People renew their hunting license and fishing license every year. So I viewed it as, here's a way for us to ask that question. Do you want to be an organ donor 3 more times? Because you're going to renew your fishing license every year. Every year I want to be able to ask you, well, hey, since you're getting your fishing license, would you want to register to be an organ donor while you're here? And so
We were inspired by Logan's Law, too.
Yes. There's another law called Logan's Law that started in Iowa, that they did that in Iowa, and that inspired me to do this here in Illinois. So I reached out to Tim Ozinga, Mokena, my local representative. So I reached out to Representative Ozinga's office, and I pitched the idea, and they called me back and said that, Representative Ozinga would like to talk to you. So I said, okay. So he called me and he goes, I want to do this. I want to tell me more. And so I filled him all about organ donation. I brought him up to speed, and he said, let's do this. Let's float it out as a bill on the House floor, and let's see what happens. And he called me and said, it's gaining momentum. And I said, oh, great. And then he called me a few weeks later and said, the vote's next week. I think we're going to get a unanimous vote, both bipartisan. The House Republicans, the House Democrats are all in favor of this.
That doesn't happen very often.
I know.
Not in Illinois.
I know.
and there were 2 other.
And so then it passed the House, and it went to the Senate, and it got co-sponsored in the Senate by Christopher Belt, Senator Belt. He's from downstate. He's also a kidney transplant recipient.
Wow.
And so he got behind it and pushed Maddog's Law through. And I'm happy to report that this past January, every time you get your hunting and fishing license now, at the end of the application, they ask, would you like to be redirected to the Secretary of State's organ donation program and sign up?
That's amazing.
So
congratulations.
Thank
Good
you.
for you.
I couldn't have done it without a lot of help, but especially Representative Ozinga.
Well, it just takes somebody pushing the effort to start it, right?
Yeah, I'm just glad it's happening, and I can't imagine how many lives could get saved by this.
Is it too early to know, like, if people have signed up from it, or?
Oh, I'm sure they have. I don't have statistics yet, though. I'm hoping that after the first year, they'll compile those and let me know. It's the Secretary of State's office. I don't know if they can separate in their system
where they come from.
Where they come from.
Okay. From the online
where they got
hits.
redirected from, but I'm hoping they can.
How about has the Secretary of State's office been cooperative with you guys? Do you work with them? And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the former Secretary, Jesse White, huge advocate for donation. He's had some family contact with donation, and so he was a huge advocate. And the person who runs, I honestly don't know what Dan's title is.
I don't know either.
I say he runs the Chicago office for this organ donor program. I don't know if he technically does or not, but he is an amazing guy. I mean, this guy is out there every single day, weekends. He's at health fairs. He's everywhere.
Wow.
Anywhere he goes, he'll talk about donation. And he lost his fiance who was waiting for a kidney.
Oh, wow.
And she worked as the organ donor advocate for the Secretary of State before him. And when she passed, Secretary White called him in and said, Dan, I know I can't think of anybody better to take over Vicky's mission
And he did.
than you. And he did, and he's been there a lot of years, and he's a fantastic guy and does so much for donation.
What a great advocate.
Yeah.
You know,
He
somebody with
is.
that experience.
He came to our first our inaugural Miles for Maddog race, and he walked the race carrying this giant Donate Life flag,
Wow.
which became the inspiration for the next year. We started a flag parade at
Really?
the start of the race. So Dan was the inspiration for our flag parade at the start of every Miles for Maddog.
Talk a little bit about that, the Miles for Maddog. How'd that come along? How long have you guys been doing that?
So we had intended on having our inaugural race in 2020.
What happened?
Yeah.
This first socially distanced 5K.
Yeah, the first socially distanced 5K. Yeah, it obviously did not happen, but we were able to run our inaugural race in 2021. So this has been 3 years now. We've had 3 races.
Great.
So we do it's our biggest event of the year.
And where do you do the race?
We do the race in Frankfurt in conjunction with Frankfurt Square Park District. They've been an absolutely amazing partner with us. It starts and ends at the Lincoln Way North Football Stadium, which is kind
great.
of fitting.
Yeah.
And then it runs through Frankfurt Square Park District. And it attracts both runners because it's a timed and sanctioned race. And then, of course, the community and the donation transplantation community. So
That's great.
I think last year between participants and volunteers, we had over 500 people
Wow.
at our third event. So we're very proud of that.
Yeah.
And Frankfurt Square Park District has just been amazing. Not only do they partner with us on Miles for Maddog, but they also donated to us a tree grove in Frankfurt Square Park District that we call Giving Tree Park. So every year, the night before Miles for Maddog, we dedicate a tree to the previous year's organ and tissue donors.
Wow. And where is that at? Where could people see
So
that?
it's sort of at the corner of Benton Drive and Frankfurt Square Road. You have to
Okay.
go just a little bit north of Benton on Frankfurt Square Road, and it's right in the entrance to Island Prairie Park in Frankfurt Square Park District.
And I saw you have a couple videos, or at least from this year, on your website.
Yes.
From those dedications.
Yes.
Yeah, and the Giving Trees, I drive by it every day on the way to the office, and it's so heartwarming when I drive past and I see somebody walking the park and looking and reading the inscription on the plaques by the trees, and I was like, okay, so either they knew about it and they're honoring a loved one, or maybe they're just learning about organ donation.
And what do the plaques on the trees say?
Every plaque has a different quote from somebody else about charitable giving.
So basically what we did was, because we couldn't hold our first Miles for Maddog race, we dedicated 4 trees that year. So the first standalone tree is the 2019 tree that we dedicated. Okay. But then we also have 1 tree dedicated to all organ donors, organ and tissue donors pre-2000, 1 tree dedicated to all organ and tissue donors from 2001 to 2009, and then 1 dedicated to all organ and tissue donors from 2010 to 2018. So we've made sure that every organ and tissue donor has been honored in that park.
That's great.
And we take some of the proceeds from the race, and we buy a tree and donate it to the Frankfurt Square Park District to put somewhere in the park somewhere. It doesn't have to be Island Prairie Park, but it could be any of the parks around. We would just want to make sure it's sustainable so that, let's say, every tree we quote unquote take for a dedicated tree, we donate a tree back to the park district.
Oh, that's great.
So they're amazing. They have supported us. We joke that our kids' fingerprints are literally all over that park district, prom pictures and everything. We bike paths, and now we get a chance to bring people to the park district and show them what Maddie did. And there's a bench there dedicated to Maddie, and it just says,
nice. And
we wanted just a simple inscription that says, "Sit a while and smile."
How'd you come up with that?
It's just just came to us. We just that's what she would have wanted. She just wants you to sit there and smile, just enjoy life. Because that kid, there are, and I'm sure everybody knows one of these type of people that just lights up a room. They've got that charisma. They're funny. They're witty. They're a little goofy,
they're
and
loud.
they're loud, and they just light up a room, and they're just full of life. That was Maddie. And so that's what she just smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you raise money, and you also look for volunteers, right? You're wanting people to help volunteer with. Maybe just tell us, like, what do you need volunteers for? Or what do your volunteers do to help you guys?
Well, definitely as we get closer to Miles for Mad Dog, that's a huge undertaking. We probably have somewhere between 80 and 100 volunteers total who help with that, both, leading up into the race with different things, getting ready, and then on race day, cleanup crew, setup crew, working the registration table, working the course, giving out water, and it's a huge undertaking. So that's probably our biggest volunteer activity.
We do things on college campuses where we have volunteers there. So like in next week, 2 weekends, the middle of November is something called the National Donor Sabbath. So certain campuses that have chapels on their campus, they'll do an outreach event surrounded about the faith community and organ donation. And and then we hold different events and have, like, we do parades. We do the Frankfurt Fall Fest parade and the 4th of July Mokena parade. And we like to have volunteers walk with signs representing donor heroes, with pictures of donor heroes who. So it's always we always need volunteers. We always need volunteers.
How about any maybe struggles? What's been any struggles with the organization, or things that you've kind of got through that over the years?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think any community-based nonprofit always struggles with fundraising, just because, in order to get from, to build a sustainable organization, that's the key for us. Is we want this to be sustainable. I don't want to always do this, but I want to make sure that the organization keeps going and keeps, advancing the mission. And so fundraising has always been, our community has definitely come behind us, and they do all kinds of great fundraising events, whether it be the Pizza with a Purpose at Pizza Pete, or just different. We had a community garage sale and things like that to raise money. The community's always been great, but in order to get to that next level and make this a sustainable organization, we need grants. We need to get government grants or community grants or private corporate grants. We need to be supported. The bigger dollars that can make us do more things. And that's our goal, is to grow the organization and be able to advance it, and do more things like the Coda Crusade, our Students for Hope on college campuses and things like that. In order to do those and make those bigger, we're going to need bigger corporate grants. And so we're starting to do that grant writing process and trying to get a lot more grants out there. But if anybody knows of anybody that has a grant out there, we'd love to talk to them about it.
Any community partners that you kind of want to call out as being great supporters of yours up to now?
Oh, there's a lot. Gym Kinetics.
There's an organization called NORA, the Nationwide Organ Recovery Alliance. They're the ones who transport organs. There's the Chicago chapter that the gentleman, I won't mention his name, but he lives in New Lenox. He found out about our organization this past year, and they have been phenomenal. Well, we'd say we're doing an event. Any chance you can bring one of the organ recovery vehicles to have at the event? And next thing you know, there's 20 of these there.
Oh my gosh.
And these guys are just amazing. Nora. And then they connected us with a bunch of car dealers in the area that they buy cars from, who are now supporting us. And so Pizza Pete is amazing.
Pizza Pete. Ozinga, of course. They've sponsored Miles for Mad Dog. We do sponsorships every year, and we get a lot of the community-based businesses that support us.
Image 360 has always been good to us.
Printing by Joe.
Printing by Joe has been phenomenal.
That's great. It's great to see people form behind a community, form behind an organization. That's
well. I like to tell people, that to me is where organizations, nonprofits are making an impact. They're community-based nonprofits that are making an impact. And we're fortunate enough to where, with my background in marketing and Cyndi's background in education, that we had enough wherewithal to put this together. And Bob Rip, we wouldn't be anywhere
I
without
forgot about Bob,
Rip
right.
and Associates. They helped us get our nonprofit status, and they're our accountant. Phenomenal. But there are so many other great community-based nonprofits out there that we want to do what we can to help them. There's a local organization that does CPR training, and she lost her husband, who was an organ donor, and she heard about Maddog and contacted us and said, I want to do what you do, but I want to do it in the CPR area and promote CPR training. And we're like, well, we'll help you get it together. And like, well, what can I do for you? And don't worry, we need to stick together as community-based nonprofits. I mean, look at what the Lions Club does in the community and the Kiwanis. And I mean,
And that's why at Miles for Mad Dog, too, we invite any community nonprofit partner who wants to come have a table at Miles for Mad Dog and introduce people to their missions.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah, we usually have several dozen last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
We like to be able to take that opportunity to showcase other nonprofits in the community.
That's great. That's awesome to see all you guys are doing. You talked a lot about Jim Fredrickson and Gym Kinetics and the part that they play. Just can you talk a little bit about now, years later, what part does Jim and Gym Kinetics play in Maddog Strong?
well, actually, I'm glad you asked that. I wanted to mention it. So when we started the Maddog Strong Foundation 2 months after Maddie passed, I thought it was kind of a crazy idea, but I wanted, like I said, to be able to tell Maddie's story. Well, Jim right away said, well, do it. Let's do it. And so he's been on our board of directors from day one. And anytime we need anything, Jim's there. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously in the hospital, you saw what kind of guy he is. But it's not like he stuck by our side and helped us every step of the way, and still to this day helps us. And I think the coolest thing he ever did was he hired a local artist to create a mural in Gym Kinetics lobby of Maddie. It's huge. It takes up an entire wall, and he surprised us with it. And he's got a shadow box with her grips in it, and every kid that walks in that gym sees Maddie on that wall when they walk in.
That's awesome.
And I said, it's amazing that you did that for us. And he said, I didn't do that for you. I did that for me. He said, because every morning when I come in here and I turn those lights on, the first person I see is Maddog, and I always say good morning to her.
Wow.
And so, I mean, that shows you what kind of guy he is, but it also shows you what kind of gal Maddie was, that he made that impact on her.
Yeah.
Or she made that impact on him, I should say.
That's amazing. So. Well, I can't say enough how much I appreciate you guys sharing your story, and what you guys are doing for the community and for people. It's awesome that you're willing to speak so much and so freely about such a difficult time, and with obviously the hope of helping others. So thank you guys for doing that. Anything else you want to add, please? We'll share your website, your social media, all that.
Thank you.
Organ donation has been a gift for us because, I'm not sure how we would have gotten through or getting through this grief without that, the hope that organ donation gives you. Everybody understands that a recipient is going to be grateful. They're going to have incredible gratitude for getting this life-saving organ. But we as a donor family have an incredible amount of gratitude because that helps get us through. They know that, as Maddie put it, something good came from something tragic.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you guys. Keep up the amazing work. And thank you for your time talking to me.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Frank and Cyndi. I know I sure did. It was great. They gave me this great Maddog Strong hat, and I got if you see up on my screen there, I have a lanyard that they gave me, as well as a great book. And just really enjoyed talking to them. Make sure you check out their website, which is maddogstrong.org. Has a lot of great information, some great videos on there. Their YouTube channel has a lot of great stuff. They have a little studio in their office, so they're doing stuff and using it to get the word out, which is Awesome. You can find them on Facebook, on Twitter, or X, and Instagram. Miles for Maddog, their 5K, is on Saturday, June 24th, 2024. So I think you can register already. So do that. I know we're sure going to be out there this year, and this coming year, next year, and looking forward to that. So other than that, just again, please share these episodes. If you're enjoying, the conversations, if you're enjoying the episodes, we'd love it if you'd share it with your friends, your family, especially something like this gets the word out about a great organization. So we have this locals page on our website now. Has local stuff on there, a lot of local organizations. So check those out. We have the link on there to Maddog Strong, as well as a number of other ones. And if your organization or an organization that you care about is not on the list, please send us an email with the information. We'd love to add them on there as well, along with events. If you have events you want us to post on there, I'd be happy to do that too. So check out our website, mokenasfrontporch.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. This one will be on YouTube. We did a video for all of it, so it might not be a crazy exciting video, but we will have this full version on YouTube. And so have a great Thanksgiving or Christmas as it comes up, or whatever holiday you're celebrating. And thanks for listening. We're thankful for you, and see you next time on Mokena's Front Porch.